Well, Google South Africa has launched a new elections ad policy. The regulations aim to ensure that ahead of those national elections next year, political advertisers make use of verification, disclosure and transparency tools before being allowed to post advertisements on the platform. According to Google SA's statement, election advertising is a crucial component of democratic elections, with candidates relying on this medium to raise awareness, share information and interact with potential voters, most likely also to persuade them to put their ballot marks behind their name. For more on this, I'm joined now by Abongile Mashele, who's Head of Government Affairs and Public Policy for Google SA, joining us from Centurion this afternoon. To start off with, I understand that South Africa is the first Southern African country to be enjoying a policy like this by Google SA. Tell us why you decided to go ahead with this.
Good afternoon, Erin, to you and your News Africa viewers. Well, South Africa is the first country in the region to launch the policy, but it's certainly not the first globally. We have launched the policy in Europe, in LATAM, as well as in the United States. The reason why we're starting off in SSA basically is because we are nearing for our national government elections next year, and how we usually like to roll out these products because of the support requirements that are there from the back end as a company. It's better to start off in one particular country and then expand as we go along. So we've started off in South Africa because we have a presence in South Africa. There are elections coming up, and it was a perfect opportunity for us to launch the policy in the market.
So I understand the policy has been going since the 8th. It's 2 days in as we speak. And you're encouraging people who want to do political advertising for 2024 to make use of verification, disclosure and transparency tools before any advertisements will be posted through Google platforms. So what are those tools? How does it work in practice?
Basically, in practice, if you are wanting to place any political advert on our platforms, and when we're talking about political adverts, we're basically talking about an advert that contains a national political party that's running for office, that also contains a current office bearer that is currently in office in national and provincial government, as well as anyone who will be running for office in South Africa. If your advert contains any of those characters or any of those features, it is flagged as a political advert. The reason basically why we want the verification is so that we can trace where the advert comes from, the source, who paid for it, and ensure that the advert that has been placed on our platforms does not in any way infringe on some of the policies or the rules that we've put in place. How you do it, if you are a company or an advertiser on our Google platforms, we have a help center that basically helps you to let you know how you undergo the verification process, which will be administered on our platform, and will also give you the details. And just to take your viewers through what would be a typical thing that we'll be looking for in the verification process, we'll be checking things like the location of the individual, the identity or the domicile of the individual, and linkages to any political party. And the main reason for that is so that we can trace the individual, and the policy has made specific requirement for people to be South Africans or people who can be traced in South Africa.
So it's a two-step process, I understand, and there's a turnaround of some 5 business days. Since the 8th of February, have you had any adverts work their way through the system, and are you busy checking them at the moment?
The verification process actually was started in December 2022. The policy was launched on the 8th of February. We have not really received many verification requests right now. As you know, it's still quite early in the process. And as a company, we will be undergoing a great deal of public education and awareness and engagement as well through the electoral authorities to ensure that political players in South Africa are aware of the policy, its requirements, and the process. Right now, we haven't really seen great numbers undergoing the verification process, but as more people become aware of it, particularly political players, news players and other players who would have an interest in flighting political ads, then we will see an influx in the verification process.
The word clients almost slipped out your mouth there, but then, of course, you said political parties. I understand Google's advertising platforms relevant here include Google Ads, YouTube Ads, and then something called Display and Video 360. What is that? Video 360
is basically a digital platform for videos and pictures as well.
Okay.
Basically.
So in terms of the content of those ads, is there any vigilance around, for example, if something might be sort of delicate? Let's say a political party has particularly sharp views on immigration, for example, or how to deal with people who don't have the necessary paperwork to reside in South Africa, and take a hard line and a potentially sort of nefarious line on that sort of topic, and it's contained in a political advert. Is that something that might flout your policy?
Well, such things, we are guided a great deal by the country's electoral codes, the country's laws. So when we compile the policy, we actually refer to what the framework that a particular country would have. So if it is something that transgresses South African electoral laws and also South Africa's parameters when it comes to freedom of speech and freedom of expression, it will be flagged. If it also ventures into the realm of misinformation, it will be flagged. So if the information that is shared is truthful, it would not necessarily be removed. So we would have to check the truthfulness, the accuracy of that information, and also inflammatory statements. We know in South Africa we have limitations when it comes to freedom of expression, especially when it comes to hate speech.
So in terms of developing this policy, I understand you've spoken about the rules around political communication or political sort of campaigning in the country that inform the policy. Did you work with the IEC of South Africa in developing the policy, or who else might have had some input as you were refining it?
Well, basically the policy has been developed in line with the laws and the guidelines of the country. We have not necessarily engaged with the IEC in the development of the current policy, but we do have a working relationship that we have engaged on with the IEC in previous elections, where we basically take them through the policies and the requirements of our platforms. So in rolling out this policy, as well as engaging with stakeholders, we will not do any differently. We will be working with the IEC to basically share the information. And I think, Erin, it's important for us to also note that the IEC doesn't necessarily have a mandate on political advertisements or communication or broadcasting during election periods. That falls within the mandate of ICASA. ICASA also issues regulations and guidelines on how broadcasting platforms, for instance, are to engage with political parties and how they should flight certain material during an election period. So ICASA is also one of those stakeholders that we will be engaging as a company. But I think it's important for me to just flag that right now the policy is embedded on the laws of the country,
yes,
and that is what we have used to guide what we put in the policy.
So now you have that policy. It has been in effect for 2 days. In terms of moving forward with it, how does it work in terms of, maybe stoking up interest around political party funding from your clients or parties, whatever you want to call them? Do you approach potential political clients, potential political players leading up to the elections? Do they come to you? How do you, get this policy to actually have some bearing on what may come up on Google Ads for people?
Well, from an education perspective, I think I've already mentioned, from an education perspective, we will work through the IEC, because the IEC works with all political players in the country to just socialize the policy with political players in the country. From a placement perspective, which is basically clients of Google wanting to place ads on our platform, they will follow the normal processes and procedures that we have within the company for placement of ads. But now the difference is when you place the ad, it will have to undergo a verification process, or you will have to be verified before you place an ad, the moment we pick up that it is a political ad. So we already have processes in the company that companies undergo on a daily basis to place advertisements, and they will follow the same processes. We work through advertising agencies and PR companies or individuals who approach Google directly wanting to place adverts, and they will follow the same process.
Abongile Mashele, what I would give to see your price cards for political party advertising heading into 2024 elections?
Well, we will, as part of the transparency report, we will actually be publishing the amount spent on political advertisements in the transparency report, and we will also indicate when we have refused to flight a particular advert on our platform. We will publish that in the transparency report. So, Aaron, you'll definitely be aware of the amounts that have been spent by political players, who has spent the amount, and if there's been any transgressions, where the transgressions come from.
I think that is an excellent place to end this interview on a Friday afternoon. Abongile Mashele from Government Affairs and Public Policy for Google SA, thank you for your time on that new policy now in effect around political party advertising for 2024, which is, of course, next year.